Right, today I've come to Corfe Castle on the Dorset coast, and it's really windy! The history of Corfe Castle begins with William I. William I was the first person to build a castle on this particular area of land. It was a standard Norman motte and bailey, and he actually had to trade a church for the land. He was the one that realised its important defensive position, controlling a gap in the Purbeck hills between two major towns, protecting both the coastline and travel across the south coast of England. It was replaced and repaired several times, being rebuilt from a standard motte and bailey earthen mound into a modern stone fortress. During the anarchy of Stephen and Matilda, it was besieged several times, and at that point its outer palisade was of wood and it had a central keep of stone. And it was eventually rebuilt entirely in stone by the late medieval period. It was a royal fortress until the reign of Elizabeth I, when she sold it to raise funds, and it eventually passed into the Banks family, who kept it until the Civil War. The English Civil War was the downfall of many noble families, as those who sided with the Royalists had their lands confiscated, and Corfe Castle was one of the last Royalist strongholds to fall. It was maintained not by the man, Sir John Banks, but his wife. John Banks stayed with the King at Oxford at the King's Court, while Lady Banks manned the castle with 80 defenders against between 400 and 600 Parliamentarians. It was quite a complex siege, with countermarches and hidden forces and ruses to hide various troops. But eventually the castle was taken, and it was demolished on the orders of Parliament, creating the romantic ruin that we see today. Corfe Castle lies in the Purbeck Hills, which are a ridge of chalk downs on the south coast, near Poole and Bournemouth. The chalk hills have always been quite difficult to build on, so they have maintained a very strong agricultural focus, and they are incredibly beautiful to look at. And Corfe Castle forms this tremendously romantic ruins right in their centre. The way Corfe Castle was destroyed at the end of the Civil War has left it being this permanently stark ruin, like something out of Lord of the Rings. The level of the destruction of the castle is astounding as you get close to it. Lumps of masonry the size of buses just sits on the side of the hill where it was blown off from the original walls, and must have been completely shattered by gunpowder and cannon fire. Even where they are intact, many of the walls lie at odd angles, and as you walk around, although it appears that you're walking through a well-maintained route, it couldn't possibly be the real route of the castle, because there are collapsed walls in your path. When compared to contemporary fortresses on the continent, castles like Corfe Castle were not very effective for the kind of war that was being waged in the Civil War. They didn't have well-maintained firing lines, and their round towers or square towers were easily broken apart by cannon fire. However, the abundance of them and their well-primed natural locations meant that they were still very difficult to take. In 1660, with the restoration of the monarchy, the Banks family were given back their confiscated property. Rather than rebuilding their slighted fortress, they decided to build a new country estate at Kingston Lacy, elsewhere in Dorset. When you approach the castle on the tourist route, you really get a sense of how difficult it must have been to take this place. It is on a very high mound of earth, with a curtain wall all the way around it and a central keep. Even in its slighted state, considered indefensible, I would not want to be one of the men who had to try and take it. It would be unpleasant, to say the least.